I'm not sure what happened, but my watch list for the second half of November nearly doubled the first. It could just be that there was more going on, but the sheer volume did delay this one quite a bit, even with keeping myself out of Tag League purgatory. Nonetheless, there's plenty to talk about, and it's best to get into it. As always, a quick reminder that I haven't seen every single match to have taken place, and the ones I do choose to talk about are all based on my personal enjoyment and nothing else. A slight spoiler warning, as I will be talking about match finishes here too. After watching 119 matches spanning 22 promotions, here are a few of my favorites from the back half of November. Two of my favorites on the independents clashed in the first round of the King of Indies tournament, and on paper, it's a very interesting matchup. I don't remember seeing their previous meeting, so I was curious to see how Thatcher would have to work around the size disparity, though at times, he opted to try to go through Calvin Tankman. This is apparent as soon as the bell rings, with both exchanging live rounds immediately, but Thatcher attempts to fool Tankman in order to target his leg to varying results. Much like his DPW World's title run, Tankman can ride that line between being an obstacle and vulnerable when called for, so when Thatcher can execute some legwork, it doesn't feel out of place. They both balance that consideration with the bombs incredibly well, and man do they exchange some sickening shots. Be it in Thatcher's limb targeting or the haymakers these two have a reputation for, rest assured they beat the holy hell out of each other. With that balance comes a generally breezy pacing to this, as Tankman would have to wrestle 2 more times on the night, but I do think they allowed enough time for all the punishment to register. Slight spoiler, but this being Thatcher's only match in the tournament, he doesn't hold much back, even taking a bump onto exposed concrete. I can't imagine any scenario where that ends well. Thatcher utilizes separation when back into the ring in an attempt to trap Tankman, but like earlier, any efforts to work around his opponent doesn't get him too far. Tankman's sheer force is enough to power through. That back fist is once again enough to level the playing field, and a Tankman driver is enough to clinch a berth into the second round. This is available for free on YouTube, and for something as hard-hitting, considerate, and animated as this match is, you can do a whole lot worse with your 10 minutes. As a matter of fact, you can find the whole event on West Coast Pro's YouTube page. We begin the AEW block of this episode with a pairing that on paper is an absolute no-brainer. By inserting Claudio Castagnoli into the Darby match, you're clearly in for some baffling acts of violence, but there's also a natural chemistry here from a mechanical perspective, giving a little more substance on top of its car crash elements. You've heard it so many times at this point, but Claudio is one of the best bases around. In a match like this, he can string together the more clever wrestling sequences based around Darby's agility to seamlessly transition into the freakish displays of strength and the aforementioned depravity of the high spots. A great example of this is the sequence leading to the coffin drop to the outside and how they eventually get back into the ring. It's a natural progression, and every step is equally nasty as it is impressive. Even the smaller exchanges share these qualities, like Darby bumping through the bottom ropes off of a forearm, or the repeated knee drops from a gut wrench before that. I feel that they do get the most out of this dynamic, but in the end, it still boils down to watching a human being chucked around in unimaginable ways, and Claudio delivers that in spades. The different variations of Claudio's swings, the press through the ropes on the outside, or just hip-tossing Darby straight to the floor are all jaw-dropping. Naturally, Darby can only get himself back into this thing by throwing himself at his opponent as hard as he possibly can. That rhythm of the clever and the absurd works so well, and I think you can enjoy this match within that space, even if the demolition derby is what brought you to it in the first place. Claudio ending this with a lariat is the perfect exclamation point for the 13 minutes of insanity that preceded it, and I always appreciate when he ends matches with those quick death blows. In this match specifically, it feels disrespectful. He could have easily thrown one of these instead of dropping his opponent a good 10 feet onto the timekeeper's table, but the match was better for it all things considered. This is one of those cases where you see two names together and the resulting match is exactly what you hoped for. It really makes you wonder how they got this angle so wrong, because the week-to-week TV was very good for a little bit. I believe this is the first time since Double or Nothing that I'll be looking at multiple matches from one AEW show, as Full Gear was pretty good. even better than I remembered actually. Big Boom AJ vs QT Marshall on the pre-show was very well done. Roddy vs MJF was better than I initially gave it credit for, and while many were turned away by a Jay White Hangman double limb work match, I still liked it, though I've accepted that I'm partial to that pairing in general. On top of all of that, we got a return to form from Mercedes Moné, now facing a much more favorable opponent in Kris Statlander. While Stat's heel turn was inexplicably dropped after the Willow match, it's still Kris Statlander, who provided everything Mercedes needed to get her TBS title reign back on track. Similarly to the Willow matches, I think Mercedes excels when she is the smaller wrestler. Statlander acts as a foundation for a great deal of the CEO's lucha influence, and how the knee targeting is handled down the stretch works for the champion. An unexplained face turn for Stat was very strange, though I do think it actually aids this match. You want to see Mercedes get her comeuppance, and Statlander is able to as an emphatic powerhouse. Most of the match settles into this cadence, and drives home the point of presenting Statlander as Moné's equal. This being the longest match in AEW between two women lends itself to that idea. It's obvious when wrestlers are going long for the sake of going long, and I never got that feeling over the near 20-minute runtime. When you do take the match length into account, you are susceptible to a lot of near falls. I think in this case, I could see them annoying someone, but for the sake of cementing Statlander in that upper echelon, even if a lot of us have held her in that regard for a while now, I think it works. When Mercedes can't beat her in the same way she's found success for the last 6 months, she has to resort to other methods, which is where the knee targeting becomes more significant. The way Mercedes goes for the knee feels more cynical than calculated. There's enough creativity in how it's delivered befitting of this match, be it the frog splash or the biting right before the finish. Speaking of, I always appreciate when the ring ropes are utilized for impact. I haven't been thrown into them personally, but anytime a spot like this happens, it looks incredibly painful. Statlander's throat colliding with the middle rope out of a Cazadora is a really cool idea, even if the cameras didn't get the best angle of it. Mercedes scraping by with a roll-up is an appropriate finish in the end. Overall, I really like this, and I look forward to revisiting the sequel the following month. Full Gear closed out with arguably the peak of the Death Riders angle, post-Danielson at least. A year after Orange Cassidy successfully defeated Jon Moxley at this very event, he looks to recapture that magic with the World Championship and the essence of the company at stake. What a heel like this iteration of Moxley needs is fiery opposition, and OC makes good on that before the bell even rings. I love this opening as it doesn't just establish the urgency required, but gets things to the outside, and everything that happens outside dictates a great deal of the match moving forward. Moxley's instinctual fall to the floor puts him in familiar territory. He can brawl like few can, and going out of bounds allows him to establish control and draw first blood. It's a real efficient layout for the early goings. Speaking of the blood, it isn't OC's wildest blade job by any means, but it did stand out as far as where it ends up. There's noticeable spatter on the ground after the fact, and it paints Moxley's chest and forearms throughout the duration for added effect. This disposition complements the visual of a crazed Orange Cassidy refusing to say die in the face of the champion, despite how brutal it may be on the receiving end of Moxley's control. The back rake in the corner especially comes to mind. The difference here is that OC matches that intensity, be it a back rake of his own, or the insistence to go blow for blow so late into the match. I think this match makes the best use of all the Death Rider run-ins, as it does feel like a stalemate at this point. Moxley thinks he's one step ahead, but Cassidy came prepared. Go back and listen to that pop for Willow. In the end, I actually really like the finish of this match. The emotional whiplash of OC nearly winning with the briefcase, only for Yuta to make a final run-in is a good stealing victory from the jaws of defeat conclusion. The post-match is a complete mess that sets up the match where this angle would eventually die on its ass, but that doesn't take away from another great bout between these two. Even in the state it's in now, you can go back and enjoy this one. There were some real heavy hitters from CMLL to close out November. The Místico Hechicero singles from the 29th was a standout, but I wanted to show some love for the next night's main event. A singles match in Arena Coliseo between Blue Panther and Ultimo Guerrero. At a combined age of 116, These two put together a match brimming with charm, and the ideas at play would not feel out of place at any point of time. I've talked in previous videos about how the noise in this venue sits right on top of the action, and this match takes further advantage of how intimate the venue can be. There's no barricade at ringside, and the balcony is only a couple of feet higher than the ring posts, so you get instances of Ultimo Guerrero getting into it with individual fans, or singling out someone in the upper deck to string the sequences together. Ultimo takes every chance to bask in that crowd reaction, even willing to leave the ring with a clear advantage to confront a fan. All of the milking here might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I couldn't help but get wrapped up in it. It makes Panther's comebacks all the more satisfying, and they establish this before he even enters the ring. Blue Panther is jumped mid-entrance, and his first retort to Guerrero's shortcuts is a somersault off of the apron to set the tone. He doesn't get a ton of offense in this first fall, but it's the timing of it that matters. All it took was a well-timed dodge and a tijeras pinning combination to get the maestro on the board. The second fall is brief but distills the established ideas. Ultimo gets the heat back on himself, while Panther literally flies into a comeback, only for Guerrero to cheat to even the score. Naturally, things ramp up into the final frame, with multiple spills to the outside and close calls to heighten the drama, but Ultimo still insists on cheating at any given opportunity. Panther realizes this, and gives him a taste of his own medicine, grabbing the middle rope for leverage to win the match. This is not the Llave masterclass seen in the Hechicero or Danielson matches, but it makes up for all of that in heart. A little goes a long way, maybe more than a lot of things I've covered in this series, and I love the match all the more for it. And before I go, here are some honorable mentions. Aja Kong and Saori vs Meiko Satomura and Manami from Sendai Girls on November 17th. A great match, though given that I've seen very little of the Meiko Aja matches of the past, there might be a lot here that I wouldn't have picked up on, and I'm not trying to talk out of the side of my head. It's still well worth going out of the way for if you are in the same boat as me. Momo Watanabe vs Mayu Iwatani from the Stardom New Japan crossover, also on November 17th. I really liked a great deal of this, but they went full Bushiroad with the kickouts to the point where it did fizzle out down the stretch. The Intercontinental title matches from WWE on the 18th and the 30th. It's hard not to love Braun Breaker going beast mode, especially with Sheamus at the core of the matches. The triple threat with Kaiser was the only thing worth checking out from Survivor Series in my opinion. And last but not least, Adam Priest vs One Called Manders from Action on November 26th. Another great entry into this feud, and I especially enjoy how Priest threw himself into the flying chairs in the beginning of this match. And that is it from me. If you got this far into the video, thank you so much for your time and for hearing what I had to say. Be sure to do all the obligatory YouTube stuff by liking and subscribing. Find me on socials at OuterStevon, and if you'd like to hear more from me on the current events of TV wrestling, check out The Underhook Show on your preferred platform for podcasts. Links in the description. Thanks again for watching, and tune in next time as we enter the final month of matches worth watching for 2024.